This week, I woke up one morning with a stiff neck, and I've discovered it's still kind of with me. When I was saying the Eucharistic prayer at 8 o'clock, I felt a jab. In my search for a quick, almost magical cure via the power of the internet, WebMD, I found myself going down a deep rabbit hole into the physiology of the human body. What I discovered is fascinating. The tension we feel in our muscles, the kind of ache that makes us stop, notice, and try and do something about it, is actually the result of a chemical reaction. In fact, all of our movement comes through the interaction of the proteins like actin and myosin, triggered by the release of calcium ions. Muscle tension is created by contraction. Make a muscle, contraction, right? It depends on two things, length and tension. When muscles lengthen and contract together, we get motion or force. But tension can also build up without any movement at all. Think of holding a dumbbell in place in one position, or unconsciously tightening your shoulders, perhaps going into the lunchroom for the first time of school this day, or thinking about all the things you have to do at work, or you fill in the blank. Or unconscious, or perhaps you're holding a child. I know Nancy often has that feeling, holding a child, or Jessica as well, where there's just tension building up even though you're not moving. Or maybe you're the child, fast asleep in one position all night, only to wake up with a stiff neck and a blinding headache. And as much as we hope for an easy internet solution, the truth is the way forward is not instant relief, but intentional, patient release. Practices like stretching, breathing, mindfulness, proper hydration, and scheduled appointments with the gifted hands of a massage therapist can help manipulate and trigger the muscle fiber to release and allow the body to return to a state of rest. Whether you've dedicated the time to the solo practice of deep stretching, or you've found the assistance of the aid of a massage therapist, you know that releasing the tension in our muscles is no easy feat. Freeing the tension comes through carefully applied force that painfully triggers the muscles to lengthen into relaxation. This is one of the ironies of life, that while freedom is often secured by force, force can never maintain freedom. Sustained force only leads to the buildup of tension, the very tension from which we need to be released from to discover freedom at the outset. No, to find and maintain freedom, we need a different energy to cultivate it, the very practice of freedom in our lives. And I think that's what Jesus is getting at this morning in today's rather difficult and shocking readings. Like a massage therapist, he's pushing on a stressed and constricted parts of our lives. And we go, ow! He uses forceful language. Whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, hate wife and children, hate brothers and sisters, and yes, hate life itself, cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not carry the cross and the shameful death that it implies cannot be my disciple. None of you can be my disciple unless you give up all your possessions. Wow. Ouch, indeed. These are strong and bold words, forceful enough to turn away the large crowd that's been traveling with him. And maybe that's the point. Jesus is telling them, you're looking for a quick fix, a magical cure, even before the internet existed, to that painful tension you feel in your lives. But the true freedom of discipleship comes at a steep cost. Are you willing to pay for it? Are you able to strike out on a new path that will totally reorient your life? Are you willing to surrender to something greater? These same questions are still live. Like an ungrounded fixture, they still shock and provoke us, triggering us to acknowledge the tension we already feel. As modern-day hopeful, sometimes hopeless, disciples, we wonder if we're supposed to give up everything to follow Jesus. Is it even possible for us? For we are possessed by our many possessions. But what exactly is the alternative? We feel dissatisfied and constricted by the current state of our lives. Is this all there is? Working to pay the bills, struggling to survive the exhausting work week, just to escape to an all too short work weekend where we can root for the Bills. Go Bills! For most of my life, I've taken these words of Jesus, of hating, not literally, but rather as a form of leave-taking, which is indeed some of the ways that other Bibles translate this word hate. Leave your father and mother and brothers. Leave your family for the sake of my name. And I thought of this as a call to move away from my family, to get married, to travel to a faraway country as a missionary, or maybe enter a monastery. And while I still admire and feel inspired by those who make those sacrifices for the sake of Jesus' name, I've come to see that there's also a deeper meaning to this leaving or hating. As I've grown older, I've become aware of how deeply our emotional lives are shaped by our parents and our siblings. Often these early bonds continue to hold us long after we physically left the home. They create a hardwired family system in us that we continue to recreate and play out with others. How often have you found yourself talking to some person who makes you angry, only to realize this person is actually a personification of your older brother? How often have you felt ashamed, only to find out that you've actually discovered your father in this other elderly gentleman? This is what we do. Some families equip their children with whole toolboxes of techniques for navigating the world, while some others give their children only hammers. And when your only tool is a hammer, the whole world becomes a nail. Even though we may have long ago literally left the house in which we were raised and outgrown those formative confines of the parent relationship, your parents may be long gone. You still carry the tension created in your childhood. These childhood impressions, sometimes called wounds, never go away. We just ignore them. Emotional muscles until we find there's a crick in our lives and we wake up in pain, hoping for some instant solution to our lifelong tension. We're bent, stooped over by our constricted lives that have not properly tended to the hurts that we carry. I only recently remembered how much I hunger for a different relationship with my father. Instead of accepting things as they are, I keep hammering and hammering away to try and change things, trying to change my father, still hoping that he would give me the kind of attention I've longed for. Instead of seeing all the ways he's been paying attention to me in his own way, like moving to Jamestown, a city he absolutely hates. If you've talked to him, he's told you. To work here for me, to care for a building that he deems a useless money pit. It's falling down, you know. A new building would be much better. To regularly clean up after the unhoused population that significantly unnerves him and troubles him. Indeed, his first week, he had left some clothes hanging and found that someone had come in and changed into his clothes. Not an easy thing to live with. And still, 5 years later, he's here because he loves me. Even though he doesn't use the words that I would want to hear. I wonder if this sounds familiar in your life. For I witness how many of my friends remain haunted by anger, resentment, or disappointment born out of family relationships and expectations, even when their parents have long since gone into the God's glory. They've never really left home. This is especially true for those who carry the wounds of childhood abuse. For them, awareness of these experiences can bring back the home situation with an almost unbearable intensity. It's in this light that Jesus' invitation to leave father and mother, brothers and sisters, takes on a whole new meaning. Can we unhook ourselves from the emotional bonds that restrain us, the expectations and the wounds that keep us from following our deepest calling? This is not just a psychological question. This is a profoundly spiritual one, with real consequences for our healing and our life with God and in community. What Jesus is showing us this morning is that sometimes we practice spirituality with the same unintentional constriction and stress that we feel in our daily lives. He uses forceful words to wake us up to this reality. But as I've suggested already, while freedom is often secured by force, force can never maintain freedom. Following Jesus is never about hate, violence, or force. No matter what church or group might suggest it, if they are, they're not following Christ. It's something different. We know this to be the fact. There are all kinds of white nationalistic Christian, in quotes, Christian movement going on today. This has nothing to do with Christ. Christ is about humility. Christ is about love, not violence. Instead, Jesus uses words to massage the tense muscles of our striving and to invite us into a new path. Irish poet and priest John O'Donohue proposes a different way of cultivating the spiritual freedom we're craving. He writes, "Too often, people try to change their lives by using the will as a kind of hammer to beat their life into its proper shape. The intellect identifies the goal of the program, and the will, accordingly, forces the life into that shape. This way of approaching the sacredness of one's own presence is externalistic and violent. It brings you falsely outside yourself, and you can spend a lot of years lost in the wilderness of your own mechanical and spiritual programs. You can indeed perish in a famine of your own making. If you work, however, with a different rhythm, you will come easily and naturally home to yourself. Your soul knows the geography of your destiny. Your soul alone has the map for your future. Therefore, you can trust this indirect, oblique side of yourself. I would insert, it may even be the Holy Spirit living and working in you. And if you do, it will take you where you need to go. But more importantly, it will teach you a kind of rhythm for your journey, a kind of spaciousness. Jesus uses the word hate to create some space for the detachment of discipleship, which is what O'Donohue is describing. The 13th century German mystic and Dominican monk, Meister Eckhart, waxes poetic about the need for detachment. Detachment, he says, is more important than love. He writes, "The teachers greatly praise love, as does St. Paul, who says, 'Whatever things I do and have not love, I am nothing.' But I extol detachment above any love. First, because at best, love constrains me to love God. But detachment compels God to love me. Now, it is a far nobler thing, my constraining God to me, than for me to constrain myself to God. That is because God is more readily able to adapt himself to me and can more easily unite with me than I could unite with God. That detachment forces God to me. I can prove thus. Everything wants to be in its natural place. The law of entropy, right? Now, God's natural place is unity and purity, and that comes from detachment. Therefore, God is bound to give God's self to a detached heart. In the second place, I extol detachment above love because love compels me to suffer all things for God's sake, whereas detachment makes me receptive of nothing that is God but God. Now, it is far nobler to be receptive of nothing but God than to suffer all things for God. For in suffering, a person has some regard to the creatures from which he gets the suffering. But detachment is quite free from all creatures. But that detachment is receptive of nothing but God. I can prove this way. Whatever is to be received must be taken in somewhere. Now, detachment is so nearly nothing that there is no thing subtle enough to maintain itself in detachment except God alone. He is so subtle and so simple that he can stay in a detached heart. Therefore, detachment is receptive of nothing but God. Now, I realize for 10:30 on a Sunday morning, that's some heavy philosophy. So, let me boil it down. Have you ever gone to a Pearl City Clay House or tried to throw a pot? Right? It's hard, right? Because when you're trying to throw that pot, and this goes back to our first reading, there is this tension that's there. If you hold too tight, you get a ball of clay. If you hold too loosely, the clay is everywhere. It takes a detached hand to let the motion of the wheel and the thickness and firmness of the clay guide you. It's a detachment. You can't make that pot into something. The pot needs to be called forth. That is what it means to be in relationship with God, to be in the midst of that tension between holding on for dear life and letting go and letting God act. What we're talking about in detachment is a receptivity, being open. Detachment might not only be the spiritual state of rest and relaxation of our muscular will. It might also be a deeper discipleship that counts the cost and invites God to pay the bills. This morning, I invite you to let go of all the expectations that someone told you once you had to be, or somehow you heard wrongly. Let your life loosen up. Constriction is never spiritual. The life of the Spirit is openness, it's grace, it's compassion, it's love, it's peace. That's what God invites us to. That's what God is doing us. We just need to detach from those ideas that we have for ourselves, those notions of perfection or trying to prove our worth, and just let God's hand shape us into the very perfect way that we are always meant to be. Let God work in you today. Let the Spirit shape you and realize you have all the love you need. You've always had it. Amen.